it's time to begin. And I want to welcome you to this gathering. Gatherings like this are sometimes called a celebration. That seems to me pose a problem, since at the heart of this gathering, others like it, is really loss, which we have a hard time celebrating. I'm choosing to think of this as both recognition and gratitude. Eric Solomon came to the English department in 1964, and in the course of his working life on this campus had just about every job other than coach of the baseball team that he wanted. He was, as you know, acting head of the library twice, a job that he genuinely loved. He was acting provost. I once jokingly offered him the Academy Award for that acting, because he did it in ways that most provosts don't. He was an absolutely wonderful teacher. I can say that not just because I feel I should, but because I actually taught with Eric. I'll admit it was sometimes hard to get in a word. I genuinely admired his teaching. The other thing I genuinely admired, that I wanted to bring up at the very beginning, was how important Eric's role in what we now refer to as the strike was. The strike that began on this campus in November of 1968 was, in many ways, campus shattering. It wasn't completely unexpected because, as many of you will remember, the 60s, the late 60s, 68 in particular, was a time of real turmoil in American higher education, worldwide higher education. Eric, who had been seriously involved with the Union, the Academic Senate, who had an extraordinarily wide range of friends and acquaintances all across the campus, was genuinely, deeply committed to the students having the right to have their say. For Eric, it was an issue of principle, it was an issue of civil liberties, as well as, on certain levels, civil rights and free speech. And this turned out to be extraordinarily important as the strike went on, particularly as morale began to dip as we were moving to March. At that point, one of the things I wanted to point to as we begin was the extraordinarily important way in which Eric and Art Bierman took it upon themselves as part of the negotiating team to argue strenuously, and for the most part effectively, against punitive reprisals against the student strike leaders. Faculty went on strike were punished in some ways, but the hard feelings in the administration about the students potentially a source of very, very great viciousness. Eric was absolutely splendid in defense of the students and their rights. Something I myself fondly. Let me tell you a little about the plan for us now. We're going to begin with a little bit of archival material. For those of you who know me, this is high-tech beyond my wildest imagination. But I was lucky and had help. And I'm going to call on Catherine Powell, who is the director of the Labor Archives at this university. Labor Archives being another aspect of the community. our communal life that are deeply, deeply respected and supported. She will explain where the picture comes and will provide a little bit of audio.
It was my great pleasure to know Eric on a lot of fronts, both as the advisory board member, but also as an active member of the California Faculty Association, the union of faculty here at San Francisco State. He was retired by then, but he has so much advice for us about history, about what was going on campus currently. Even though he was retired, he was so plugged into everything that's happening here. And he shared it with his wonderful sense of humor and insight. And so in the Labor Archives, we worked with him a lot to document the history of the strike. And we have a set of oral histories in the archives of key members who participated in that, including Art Bierman and others. And this is a clip from the collection, and the photograph comes from a set of panels that were put together by the American Federation of Teachers, Local 1352, which was the local that was on strike during 68, 69. And this is an image from a set of panels that the union put together and would bring to place to educate the public about what was happening on campus. And so here you see Eric with his strike sign. I believe that's in front of the business building. So I'm going to just play the little clip, pick up some sections.
San Francisco State in 464. Yeah. What kind of place was that you described? Oh yes, it was liberal teachers free. Progressively is the term I would use, but most of us thought of liberals in those days, you recall. It was filled with a faculty that had most unusual backgrounds. These were not the traditional research faculty, but they were artists. There was a very heady time there. The student body, as it developed at that time, was not particularly political. It was education. They ran what was called the experimental college, where groups like Paul Goodman and Harold Taylor would be given professorships to come and talk for a semester. Saul Polinsky was one of them. And of course, obviously, a great deal of organization was going on. Incredibly heavy teaching load, courses, which meant we could teach at the end or anything you want. Because we just created courses. I was happy to teach a course, for example, to create a field in literature and society. Novel and politics. You are dealing with someone who don't recall other stuff.
There's much more. It's really worth listening to. It's on the Internet Archive, or if you go to the Labor Archives website, you can link to the full audio of that.
Many of you here know that Eric really didn't like memorials. He had his reasons. I think he thought more often than not they turned into self-aggrandizement or some such. But he was often asked to speak at memorials, and he always rose to the occasion. So in thinking about today, I thought we should begin with the master. I'm now going to call on a colleague from Eric's time in the library. Meredith Elias.
The voice. Just remembering that voice. In addition to his voice, Eric was the first person that I knew that could growl at me with a twinkle in his eyes. It was wonderful. I crossed paths with him as a low-level library employee who had just gotten a library degree. And I was cataloging a collection of historic children's books donated by Marguerite Archer. And he brought some of his childhood books in for the collection, and was very generous with me as a mentor. Marguerite literally said, you need to knock on Eric's door and have him teach you about writing about a collection. I was a broadcasting engineer, so I knocked on his door and he growled with a twinkle in his eye, and he said, well, why don't you write something and I'll kind of go over with it with you. Well, he ended up proofreading the first article that I wrote that didn't get published, about a woman artist that was offered this job at the Saturday Evening Post that Norman Rockwell and she fascinated me. And so he helped me to be more artistic in how I described her work. And though it didn't get published, he started me on a path of writing that has totally enriched not only my career, but my personal life, my interests. And he told me, you know, if you're going to write about this American children's literature collection, you should probably study American history. So he's the one that pointed me in the direction of American history, which is something that I've written about, certainly in recent years. So whenever I think of Eric, it's not sad, it's with gratitude, because he's such an important person in my journey. And he was a mentor that worked across this university, I would say. You know, if he couldn't help you, he would say, I know somebody who can help you. And so for all of the students, I was recently talking to one of the striped students that was an English major, Ernie Brill, who was a sound truck guy, and, you know, with Hayakawa pulled the plug. And he was, you know, when Eric's name came up, it was just joy. It was just joy. So, that's my piece. Thank you.
Meredith was part of an absolutely extraordinary gathering several weeks ago of student survivors of the strike. And Ernie Brill was there. Ernie Brill is a legend in the English department, for those of us who remember these legends. In the episode about the sound truck matters because S.I. Hayakawa was a member of the English department before he was drafted to be a commandant. And the idea that he climbed up on that, it was a VW bus with wires running up to the top, that he, wearing his tam o'shanter, climbed up onto the roof of the truck and pulled out the wires was extraordinary. But I'll interject one further part of the story. In the crowd down below was another of our colleagues, Kay Boyle, and a few of us in the English department. Kay was remarkably feisty, pointed up at Hayakawa and yelled, "Hayakawa, you're Eichmann!" Hayakawa leaned down and said, "Kay Boyle, you're fired!" That didn't stick. Now I'm not going to ask Trini to come up and talk some about Griff, Eric's involvement with this campus.
When Steve asked me to say something about Eric's contributions to the university, I searched through my computer files for the Academic Senate resolution that thanked Eric after his year as acting provost. The title of the resolution was the last of the big cigars. We all remember Eric striding across the campus, followed by a cloud of cigar smoke. I couldn't find the resolution, but I did find an essay that Eric wrote on the 25th anniversary of the founding of the Friends of the Library. And I want to quote a few parts of it. Don't worry, I won't try to imitate Eric's Boston accent, but now I'm quoting Eric. On the very first day of my arrival at the library to serve as acting director, I came upon a startling sight, a bonfire of books. My first question was, how or why can we be burning books? The answer was bureaucratic. These books are redundant or outdated or damaged. They are state property. The rules order that we destroy such volumes. So I gave my first order, no more burning of books. And I'm continuing to quote, during that autumn, I looked into the Friends of the Library programs elsewhere, checked with the CSU lawyers, and convinced the foundation to handle any financial problems. The seed of the Friends was planted, but how to have that seedling grow into a bush called the Friends of the Library? Before the new director arrived, he wanted to get it all done before somebody else stepped in. I made one of the few administrative decisions that fill me with inordinate pride. Who on this campus could organize a venture of this kind, could gain support for a complex project that would have to involve the library personnel, book-loving faculty, active and retired, community volunteers? Who? Only someone who could inspire the indifferent to an activity, frighten the hostile into acquiescence, make the project happen. I think Eric was really describing himself here, whether consciously or not. I'm now quoting Eric again. The answer obviously was Ann Patterson. She had no connection to the library. She was a semi-retired physical education professor and a long-standing pillar of the university's capital C conservative, capital P power structure. She was for years a disbeliever in every socio-political issue I supported. We had many bitter feuds, but she was also a superb organizer. And in an inexplicable way, she liked me and I liked her. Okay, unquote. Together, Eric and Ann created the Friends of the Library. Her role is memorialized in the annual award by the Friends to one of the library faculty or staff. Only a few of us remember Eric's role in the creation of that organization. Eric clearly loved this university and the concept of the university. And he enjoyed talking with a wide variety of the members of the university community, from gardeners to presidents. He seemed to know almost everyone. And his story about the Friends of the Library indicates that he knew people's politics, he knew their abilities, and he used that information to benefit the university in various ways. Just for another example, he and my late colleague, Jules Teigel, drew upon their love of baseball to create a highly popular interdisciplinary course on the history and literature of baseball. Eric's university service included chairing the academic senate. He and I disagreed on more than one occasion about which of us had attended more senate meetings during our time at the university. I knew that I had that dubious distinction, but Eric would never admit it. He served as special assistant to President Paul Romberg, acting director of the library 3 times, not 2, and acting provost once, and on a wide variety of committees. I think he most loved being library director. He once told me what he called Romberg's rule about administrative positions. Never accept a position lower than the last one you've held. But Eric broke that rule when he was offered a chance to be acting library director after he'd been acting provost. Or I thought maybe he considered library director to be a higher position. Eric never aspired to be a permanent administrator, but he saw acting appointments as a way to benefit the university. In his story about the Friends of the Library, you can see how he set out to create something before the next library director arrived, so that what he did could not be undone. That project was designed to bring faculty volunteers from across the campus together with community volunteers to benefit the most significant university-wide facility, the library. Eric could be diplomatic or he could be forceful, but he was never afraid to speak his mind. I'll close with a memory from one of my first years on campus, sometime around 1972 or so. At the time, I'd heard Eric's name, given his involvement in the strike, and given my department's involvement in that strike, his name was certainly known to me, but I hadn't met him. My first memory of actually seeing him was at a reception for Al Shanker, the national president of the American Federation of Teachers. Our local often disagreed with Shanker. And at the reception, as I remember it, Eric explained Shanker's errors to him at considerable length. That was Eric speaking truth to power.
I'm now going to ask Al Willard, my forward old friend, colleague. Al.
I see a lot of people out here that I haven't seen for a long time. I'm going to talk about part of Eric that I knew probably better than most people here, and that's his love of Maine. But first I want to start with something about the English, about this building, a little history. The last time that I spoke to the English department in 1970 was to review the plans for the new humanities building that was to be right here. But that was removed from the budget the following year when Reagan became governor. And then we had to wait 20 years to work on this one. And I was thinking as I was writing, it probably was a good thing. That building was not very big. And the university enrollments have really increased. So maybe it worked out for the best in spite of 20 years of poverty, space poverty. Last week, I was sorting through my stuff, trying to come up with donations for a book sale room in the library. And I came across a folio of poetry written by a long-retired faculty member, Wilder Bentley. Some of you will remember that name. The folio was called the Pestalozzi Sequence. In the folio, I found a poem titled "In Praise of Eric Solomon's Devotion to Youth Liberation." And I knew that I had to say it today, even though it's not about me. It goes something like this. Brave Eric, friendliest of all friends, of youth I've known, through 40 years I've taught. We've striven most to serve their students' needs and least to serve their own. Now, I don't know much about Eric's teaching, like most of you do. But he was my friend. And I'd like to talk about that. Not much related to San Francisco State, but to another place that he loved. I'm from Maine. I grew up in Maine. I was originally from Maine. Before I started here in 1969, in the College of Humanities, I read an article in a news magazine about the strike. And part of it, most of it, was an interview with Eric, and Irene was part of that conversation. And actually, when I read it, I thought, I don't know if I'm going to like this guy, because he knew exactly what he wanted to do and what the university should do. I'm kind of a waffler. I don't take strong stands much. But my first encounter with Eric was at a deli on Ocean Street. We happened to be there for lunch on the same day, at the same time, and Eric ordered an egg salad sandwich on a hard roll. So you can imagine what happened when Eric tried to eat that. But every time he spurted over the table, he would laugh. We were both laughing. And I thought, wow, this is okay. This guy isn't so bad after all. And during that conversation, we discovered our main connection, which held all from 1969 until he died last year. Eric spent every summer of his life on Long Lake and Harrison, Maine. I grew up in South Portland on the coast. But for 3 summers while I was in college, I drove a Coca-Cola truck in the lake region. And Eric's Lake was the focal point of my rep. So I really got to know the area, the lake region. And I liked the job. I was able to lift 7 cases of Coke in those days. When Eric told me about his family's place, I had a vision of it being a compound, kind of like the Kennedy's place at Hyannisport. That's the way he described it, like it was just, that's the way he saw the place. And he was right. It is a neat place. It's cooler than the Kennedys. It's a real Maine place with Eric and Irene have a lovely place there, a camp. In Maine, a camp is a seasonal cottage that is closed up at the end of the season. The camp is surrounded by woods and water at the end of a dirt road. Solomon Road, is it Solomon Road?
Gray Road.
Gray Road. Eric's parents and all of his siblings had camps along the lakefront. Family property even included a mountain, a little one, but a mountain nevertheless. He and Irene collected antiques, and Maine is a good hunting ground for that activity. Eric rode to town every morning, I think every morning, to buy his daily newspaper and study the box scores. The Red Sox box scores, smoking his cigars at the end of the town dock. Of course, Eric was a summer person, not like me. I was a Mainer, but now I'm a summer person. I go to Maine in the summer, like Eric and Irene. About 1980, my brother-in-law inherited a camp on an adjoining lake, the Long Lake. And he has let my family and I use that cabin every summer that we want to for a couple of weeks. So the Solomons and the Willards became neighbors, not just here, but in Maine. One summer, Eric had to come to Maine before the Solomon camp was open, so he stayed with us. Eric was right at home, swimming with our granddaughter and trying to teach her how to play baseball. She was 7 years old. But he loved it. He loved to spend his time with the kids. After dinner, while Eric smoked his cigars, he would sit on the deck and watch the sun set over the Lake Mountains of New Hampshire, just as he would have done many times at Long Lake. That's the Eric Solomon I'll always remember.
It was inevitable that colleagues, faculty members from the department should have a word. I'm going to begin by asking Jakiros. Yeah. You have a word about being a colleague.
I'm here because of Eric Solomon. He's responsible for my career. In large part, he was my very first teacher when I came back to San Francisco State as a graduate student. I'm trying to remember exactly what year it was. It was probably something like 1973. I'll bet now we would know. I was enthralled. Took every class Eric taught from that point on, became really guided by him. He was extraordinarily generous with his time, his classes were just marvelous. I said for a long time that, and I would still say it, that everything I know about American literature I learned from Eric. And it has stood me in very good stead. He literally took me by the hand when I wanted to go on for a PhD. Made introductions for me, helped me land back here on the faculty. So I didn't know I was going to speak, but I'm happy to be able to say that and to reiterate what all the rest of you who were ever his students or his colleagues already know.
I'd like to ask Jonathan. Come forward.
You will recognize several memes here. One is the paper drawn from the coat pocket. The other is, of course, a baseball cap. Well, my apologies actually for the paper, but because I speak from the heart about Eric and his whole cohort of English professors here. But in my latter days, my decaying brain requires prompt, and I thought actually it would be rather unseemly for a gent of my age to use one of these things, so I'll put it back. Anyway, let's see. I think probably in this room, in this room, I can make the most tenuous of claims to being the first to know Eric back when. and that's, understand, it's most tenuous. I don't know the year, but Eric was in New York looking for a job, and he ended up in my mother's office. She was assistant to the chair of the English department at NYU. And he, I don't know if he came in with a cigar. I don't know memes today, but in any case, she was mightily impressed by this young fellow. And unfortunately, she didn't have a job. So she picked up the phone and called my father, CCNY, and said, I wasn't there, but I can hear it. Dear, dear, I have a really impressive young man here. Could you? So Eric took the IRT up to Congress Avenue at CCNY. Pop was a Yankee farm boy, and not easily impressed. But given mother's recommendation, he listened with a certain amused smile, and by the end of listening, he too was impressed by young Eric. But he also did not have a job for young Eric, so it became, westward ho. And I'm not sure exactly the way stations along the way. This morning I found myself thinking, amusing myself by thinking that Eric had come out here particularly for a job, that he came out here because Irene needed to be here, and so I think of him as possibly what used to be called a trailing spouse, or even maybe a trailing spoon. But in any case, to our great good fortune, I'm sure. And then what I want to do this afternoon, very briefly, is install him in the pantheon of the English department. We all know he's here anyway. But, this is going to be a tough list for me. But anyhow, here we go. Remember the names, many of you do, most of you do. Weiss, and Womack, and Josephson, and Knapp, and Edwards, and Schroeds, and Nierenberg, and House, and Cunningham, and both Wilsons, and others whom I can picture, but well, with my friend Al, and I can't quite name them anymore, so I'm getting coached on names. I'm sitting next to people. And Leo Litwack, oh man, what a fella, Maddie, just the whole crew watching him. I think we can genially share a somewhat spectral figure, Joel Dorius, intoning his tagline, his famous tagline, "Lest we go mad." Joel's phrase was corrupted on a somewhat bibulous camping trip that Joel, those of you who knew him, would not expect him to show up on a camping trip. But anyway, Joel's line was corrupted to, "Let's we go mad." Which I suppose they all did in their particular ways. Right now, I'm doing it again. I'm imagining Guy Duchek being somewhat afraid of Frank Ballard, and Stanley Tick saying something slightly snappish. And then there was Eric, of course. Cigar, wisecrack, institutional wisdom, coach, softball player, sharing an office with Dan Weiss, and being about the only person sort of keep Eric in order. We who come after can only share stories. I'll content myself with just saying, Eric, thank you for including us in your large life. And yes, I hear his guffaw and smell his smoke.
The way station before here was Ohio. And from there, Eric in 1964 came to San Francisco State. Part of what he brought with him was a genuine commitment to free speech, American Civil Liberties Union. Now, include the formal part of it, reminiscences, I'll ask Mike Krasny to come up. There will be some time when that is over for others who may want to, I think the phrase here is share. Hoping that the sharing will be heartfelt and brief. There are refreshments, there's a break, and a chance for people to talk with one another.
When Steve asked me to speak, I remember Eric once saying to me modestly, Mike, I know you're a great impromptu speaker, but if you want to get it right, write it. And so I've written it. And I wanted to try to, I'm going to cover some ground, so I really wanted to honor Eric in every sense of the word. I also want to honor my friend Steve Arkin and my friends and colleagues, Stack, Chuggy, and Bill Christmas, and people who have really been behind it. It was nice working together. Eric was my colleague, my friend, my mentor. And he was also, I think by the lights of those, many of the was fortunate enough to have known him, an extraordinary man, wonderful, gifted human being. Known widely across departments here at San Francisco State simply as Uncle Eric. And why sometimes I would be asked, is he called Uncle Eric? And the answer was simple. He was that kind of archetypal, avuncular figure people knew they could count on. Kind of like a Dutch uncle in both meetings, that which came to mean one who gave tough or harsh advice, but originally one who provided advice that was strong and benevolent. And Eric's advice could be tough and harsh, but he was always benevolent. And to the many who sought advice from him, whether personal, political, or professional, and whether a matter petty or profound, he was like an uncle, where they could come to and rely on, a sage, really, with wisdom worthy of his surname. When I first came to San Francisco State as a young professor back in 1970, I was told by a number of members of the hiring committee and the department that I reminded them of young Eric Solomon, and that was heady praise. From this present perch of time, I must say that both Eric and I were very young then, almost a half century ago. But it was highly flattering of me because I had admiration for Eric from the start. He was a scholar in American literature. He had already accomplished much in his work on Stephen Crane and Henry James and American war writing. He had also been a faculty leader, as has been mentioned, of the student-led San Francisco State strike in support of Black and ethnic studies. And I was struck early on at the Communist State, which Eric sometimes, by the way, called Frisky State, and how widely and amazingly respected Eric was, even by those who were on the other side of the picket lines, and on the side of the then strike arch enemy, President S.I. Hayakawa. I remember, in fact, one of Hayakawa's closest allies and Eric's chief adversaries, Don Garrity, passed away. Garrity respected Eric, despite their long battle differences, which were exacerbated years after the strike when Garrity was the chief administrator, Eric was in charge of the union, and Eric was also head of the academic senate. And they had fought sometimes bitterly for years over labor, curriculum, and personnel issues. And yet, when Garrity died, Eric called him a worthy adversary and said to me, strange as it sounds, I'll miss him. But that was Eric. Civil, respectful, but always one who would not shy away from a battle, especially one where students or faculty rights were involved. Mourned Eric, not only as a friend and confidant, but as a man who believed without falter in righteous causes like social and racial justice. Also a man who had a soft, warm, humane, and clever, and at times boyish side. It's hard to miss. The first time he invited me, a young professor who he knew came from a working class background, to visit him in Irene's home in Pacific Heights, he opened the door to let me in and memorably said, "Welcome to the bourgeoisie." Eric and I, from the start, were pals, and that meant a great deal to me, and does to this day. You could see Eric, back in the day, nearly every day, holding forth in what was then, but now is long gone, faculty club. Always at the same table, surrounded by many admirers from different university departments, who relished his great wit and his brilliant storytelling abilities. Eric was really the university's major oral historian. He had not only been a full-serving member of the English department for many years, the head of the department, committees, many of them, and director of many theses, but also, as I said, and has been said, head of the academic senate, and eventually head of the university library. He was also, as has been said, acting university provost, as well as advisor to a number of university presidents. And I remember Eric once asking me, after he had been appointed to be in charge of a major university budget committee, if I enjoyed budgets. And when I answered that I most definitely did not enjoy budgets, he responded, "But for all his love of politics, he was rapidly discovering he had an equal passion and ability for budgeting, and wondered," he went on, with a characteristic ironic smile, "if it had anything to do with the Jewish ancestry we shared." He once saw me carrying a copy of Awake and Sing by the American playwright Clifford Odets, and happily altering John Donne's famous line, "Oh, death, where is thy sting?" he shouted at me, "Oh, death, where is thy sting?" That was Eric. Brilliant in every way, but always with a quip at the ready, a comeback, a singular, a riposte, or a touch of irony. And he was gifted and entertaining, high-energy, brilliant teacher, as Joe has said, and as many have said admiringly through the years to be greatly admired by his students. A caring man of inimitable vitality, to use a word he liked, and indefatigable goodwill. And I come back again to that boyish side. He was not only the university's oral historian, he was an established baseball historian. The boys of summer game he loved passionately with that boy that remained inside him. I cherish memories of our being together at Giants games, where Eric always provided great color and commentary. He was so good, in fact, I nepotistically had him on my radio program to talk baseball as each season got underway, and he was always outstanding. For years, Eric had in fact been at work on a book on Jews and baseball. I used to think, aside from Hank Greenberg, Sandy Koufax, and my Cleveland Indian boyhood hero, third baseman and one-time Giants general manager Al Rosen, that had to be a kind of joke. But Eric found much to write about, and many figures I had never heard of. In sheer serendipity, I ran across a set of baseball cards for sale in a Jewish museum about Jews who had played in the major leagues. I, of course, had to buy them for Eric. When I presented them to him, he was excited as a young boy might have been who was being handed a treasure trove of toys. Though Eric was possessed of a first-rate and in many ways remarkable intellect, as well as a remarkably kind and good heart, there was always a kid in him, too. One looking for excitement and engagement that could be found in Faulkner or Kafka or Eudora Welty or Toni Morrison as easily as in a pack of cards full of photos and vital stats of Jewish major leaguers. You enter the Solomon house, and I need to add the ceremony that Eric had the good fortune of having been married for many years to a remarkable, wonderful woman, Irene Solomon, the oncologist. And you see volumes and volumes of books. I used to like to say you can tell what kind of people live in a home or apartment by what rests in their bookshelves. And both Eric and Irene loved the life of the mind. Were avid readers of everything, a couple who cared about learning and stayed a witter and engaged politically. Eric even had among those volumes of his and Irene's a glorious collection of comics, which only goes to show the truly wide range of interests he possessed. He loved popular culture almost as much as he loved baseball and literature. Eric was a man of honor, as well as a man of character and erudition and deep compassion. What we used to call a Spencerian man, a Renaissance man, or if you will, a man for all seasons, a mensch. Good husband, father, friend, scholar, and teacher. Good man and kind man who could always, and I mean literally always, be kind. Loved him. and I will miss him. We are all of us poor without him, and I am sad to say we shall not see his light again.
Hard to know what to say after what's been said, but I'll add this. If someone would like to add something. All right.
Good afternoon. My name is Frederick Sommers. I'm a campus gardening specialist. I graduated from San Francisco State with a degree in biology in 1977. And because I was a biology major, I never met Eric. And I was hired here in 2012 and started working on the campus maintaining the landscape. I might be the only representative from the biology department here today. Anybody else? Yay! Okay, we got one. So I had my coffee break in the morning starting at 6:30, about 9 o'clock. And I'd go into the student union, have a cappuccino, and one day I looked around, there's this pleasant-looking old fellow sitting by himself. I'm not shy. So I went over and said, "Hi, you look like you belong here." And Eric looked up at me and nodded. I said, "But if I charge you, just go right ahead." So I started becoming a regular with a couple other fellows who are here today in the 9 a.m. Emeritus Professor's coffee. And one day I decided I'd tease Eric a little bit. It was around Easter. And I said, "So Eric, you celebrating Passover?" He said, "Well, I'm not a very observant Jew." So I thought I'd throw a little leading question. Said, "So does that make you a radical, pinko, Jewish intellectual?" And he looked up at me and said, "What do you mean? I'm very conservative." He objected to being called a radical. I gave you this picture and I asked you, in his mind, this is conservative activity, not radical. Oh my. I was really impressed. And I thought I was pulling a joke on you. I love you.
Please.
Well, I'll bring a different department into this. I'm from the old exercise physiology, physical education, now kinesiology department. I was the first male hired on the tenure track in the PE department without a coaching assignment. I had to make my living in the classroom. And somehow Eric caught wind of this. I was in exercise science and sports medicine and exercise physiology. Eric caught me at a fall party and he said, "What is that?" And I tried to explain it to him and it didn't work. But what really helped was that fall, his son was a pitcher on one of the Peninsula High School teams. And he was having an arm problem. So Eric sought me out and he said, "Okay, now show me what you are." And he said, "My son's having this problem." And I looked at him, I said, "Okay, good. No big deal. Just tell him to go to his coach and tell him he wants a week off from throwing a ball. And by then, he'll come back and he'll be fine." There was a lot riding on this, because it had to work. Or Eric was going to think I was just another one of those boneheads over there. So he caught me coming across the quad. Sometime later he said, "You're a genius." I knew about that. Then the next thing I did was in the early 1980s. I was a Yankee bonus speaker. A failure, but nevertheless a bonus speaker. A friend of mine from that other team sent me 2 World Series tickets to the Red Sox-Dodgers game going to be played in LA. Well, I had my prized favorite graduate class that night, and I could not go. What am I going to do? Well, I called the Boston Red Sox guy who wrote a little book on the Boston Red Sox. I said, hey, Eric, can you get the evening off? Can you get the afternoon off? He said, why? I've got 2 tickets behind the first base dugout. Dodger Stadium tonight. Yeah, I'll tell you, there wasn't anything I could do wrong. He just really went crazy over that. And we had a lot of fun together. Just kind of on that level. Because I was here after the strikes, so I didn't see that. And I just tried to make a living teaching classes, and I never kicked a ball or shot a basketball or anything. For anybody, it worked out fine. But he was a great guy. He was a great guy. That's one of the things I can say about him.
Good stop. Continue.
It was my beloved husband who taught the history and literature of baseball with Eric. And I simply wanted to say this. It was my privilege once or twice to go to the class. And I can assure you, Irene especially, that there was almost no one who could create this aura of utter joy than your husband standing in front of a class, holding forth and embracing baseball. And I thank you for that gift.
Well, let's have a drink.